We're just going live onto Zoom now, and I believe it says here we are live. I'm not going to touch the screen or else it gets very temperamental with me, and I want you to be able to see and follow along. So we're going to go into the Haggadah. I'm going to go the Haggadah page by page and discuss it and look at lessons and ideas and insights and how to prepare for Pesach, etc., etc. Now, why do we use a Haggadah on Pesach night? Anybody know? To say the right words. I have to get better than that, right? Okay, let's just turn the volume off here and then we'll continue. So we're gonna go. Did we just lose the picture? How did that happen? Because we went onto YouTube. And discuss it. Okay. Are we back? Do we have it back yet or not? No. Oh, the whole power went off. Just a second. All our online participants. Just a second. Our online participants, all our power went off. Why did power go off? That doesn't seem to be related to here. But this power is off. Okay, online participants, wait with us a minute. Something's gone wrong here. Maybe the plug got pulled. Let's see. The plug is in. That power's on. Just this one's off. Ah, it's back. Okay. Hopefully it stays. Let's see. Sure. Can't jinx it. Pardon? I had power, yeah. Other people told me they didn't have power. Oh, we're back. Okay, good. All right, ladies and gents, we all are getting ready for Pesach. It's coming faster than you can think. It's a train running towards us, but we don't want to run away from it. Pesach is an exciting time. It's a good time. There's lots of blessings, lots of opportunities. And what I'm going to do with this is go through the Haggadah, look at messages and lessons and ideas and how to prepare for our Pesach practically. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Once we get through that, we could go into some insights on making it more meaningful. Or as we go, ideas come to my head, come to your head. Do me a favor, don't interrupt. Just I'll break every 5 minutes and I'll say time for your insights and you'll share your insight then. Okay, so as much as you have the urge, we are on live TV and I don't want it to be interrupted. Thank you. So where are we going? We have to know where we're going, right? You know the story of Einstein. I've told it a million times. Einstein on the train and the conductor asks him, where's his ticket? And he says, oh, my ticket. He starts searching and looking. Conductor says, don't worry, I'm sure you bought a ticket. You're a little zuflagen, it's okay. An hour or two later, he sees the Einstein still searching for the ticket. He says, Dr. Einstein, I told you, we know who you are. We trust you. It's okay. Einstein says, I also know who I am. I have to know where I'm going. So my friends, we all know where we're going. We're going to Pesach. We know when it's going to be. It's 3 weeks away. Now, how do we get ready? How do we be prepared? That's what today's share is all about. And that's what we're going to discuss. Whether you're going to be with friends or with family, you're going to conduct it on your own. Now, I don't encourage you conducting Pesach on your own. But in case you feel, for whatever reason, you have to, the Rebbe conducted the Seders on his own after the Rebbetzin passed away in 1988. And it's interesting because during COVID, that discussion came up a lot. And some people, for whatever reason, they thrive better on their own. But most people don't. So I don't recommend it. I would say don't be a loner. Be with other people. If you don't have a Seder to go to, talk to me and we'll see who we can connect you with. If you could afford it, then come to the Pesach retreat. But either way, the point is Pesach is actually meant to be a time to be with others. But like we're going to get to the questions that we discuss soon. Who do you ask the questions to if you're doing your Seder alone? Ask it of Hashem. Whether you're alone or with others, you still have to prepare for Pesach. Even if you're going on a Pesach retreat, there are preparations you need to do. And so let's talk about it and let's hopefully come out with a better understanding of what is done at the Seder and hopefully a better appreciation of its importance and its meaning in our lives. And so I want to start with before the Seder, before Pesach begins. I want to go through the importance of the Seder and all its myriad details and cleaning for chametz and all those important things. And, a lot of the background that we put into preparing for this holiday. Okay? Maybe we could go through a box checking of what you have to buy, right? Maybe you have to go through what people have a hard time keeping track of this. No matter how many Seders you did, you want it to be new. You want it to be fresh. You want it to be meaningful, right? So obviously it can be challenging at times. And sorry, if anyone's devices are on, please put them on silent so it's not disruptive. Thank you. So hopefully by understanding what we do and how we do it, I hope you'll come out with, no worries. I hope we can all come out feeling well. And then I want to go into how to and answer all your questions. I don't know if I have all the answers, but we can discuss it. How do we do this and how do we do that? And where do things belong on the Seder plate and when do we do it, etc., etc. Those are going to be as well part of our discussion. Okay, so where do we begin? Let me think. We have a little exercise for you, okay? Exercise is a good thing. We like to exercise here. Simta, did you do some exercises this morning with the group? Mental exercises, don't worry. This one will only be a mental exercise. Okay, but tomorrow I believe you can do emotional exercise. And on Wednesday, you're going to do vocal exercise. And on Thursday, you're going to be doing physical exercise. So we have lots of exercises there for you. Today, we're starting just with the mind. I want you, before we begin, let's get into the right frame of mind, the right Pesach setting, okay? And to better appreciate everything that we're going to learn and experience in our discussion, and hopefully to take home, to share with others and inspire our own families as we are inspired, we know that the Seder is essentially about experiencing what? Freedom. Freedom then, freedom now. There are plenty of people who are still not free. So let's discuss how that works. We are going to recount the ancient story of our exodus from Egypt, and we are enjoined to envision ourselves as personally taking those very same steps from bondage to redemption. Okay, so ask yourself, my friends, what are the stifling elements in your life that seem to hold you hostage? Okay, and maybe it's a certain person, maybe it's a traumatic experience, maybe it's a toxic relationship, maybe it's crushing financial hardships. Can you identify what are your antagonists? What it is in your life that is holding you back? Now, this part of the exercise, you don't have to share with us. That's not our business. It's for you to identify. But if you have a thought you want to share before I discuss this further, when we go back to our national story of the Exodus, who, or let me ask you, what was the liberator of our people? Maybe not what, who? Who? Hashem, of course. Yes, through Moshe, that's true. So at our Seder, we're going to recline like royalty, and we're going to recount the story of our deliverance. We're going to be encouraged by the fact that God delivered our nation so many years ago, as God will deliver us today. And so therefore, whatever you thought of are your hostages, your addictions, your habits, your challenges, your struggles, your Egypt. What is holding you enslaved? Okay? Are you in jail in your cell phone? No, you're not? Good. I'm glad for you, Rochelle. Many others are. So the point is, yeah, you wanted to say something. Oh, that's fine. Each person has their list, and I'm sure the people of Iran will be very happy to be free soon. But now I want you to think of your own list for yourself, what it will look like. Okay, it's nice to identify other people's problems, but what about our own problems? So what would redemption look like for yourself? There was a Lithuanian character, his name was Aizele Charif. Anyone heard of him? Aizele Charif? Charif means sharp. He was a sharp fellow. So Aizele Charif, him and his wife seemed to have a little bit of what should I say? How do you describe a relationship on fire like that? Not with passion, enthusiasm, and excitement, but constantly burning each other. So Eisel was a sharp guy. And when he came home, his wife asked him, "No, did you sell the chametz already?" So Eisel says, "Yeah, I sold the chametz, the food that's leavened that we can't own over Pesach. I sold it to the rabbi." He says, "But the real chametz," pointing at his wife, says, "That chametz, oh, I can't get rid of it." So now his wife, she had to come with a comeback. She says, "Don't worry, My father sold that chametz to a goy gomor years ago. Okay, so you got to have the right sharp line. So we're going to talk about, so what does redemption look like? How will you feel emancipated and freed when you break free from whatever the problem that might be? And that's the idea here. Think of ways that, imagine whatever it might be, breathe it in, imagine it, and God is ready to give it to you. And you have to be ready to experience it. In the past, I've told you stories. I don't want to go through the same Maisalach that I told in past years, because I see I have it on the screen here, but I'm not interested in reading the story again unless you really want it. But it's a story about how that highlights how they experienced Pesach, even in the darkest of places, such as concentration camps. Now you could exchange that with stories of hostages in Gaza, how they experienced Pesach, drinking dirty water and avoiding to eat the pita they were given. No matzah there. They had bitter tears, not from maror, not from the bitter herbs, but from literally experiencing and tasting the bitterness. Last year, a mother of one of the hostages who was still held in captivity in Gaza, she said, perhaps she would suggest that this year, instead of just dipping your onion and potato into the salt water, you should drink the salt water, because that's the only water they get to drink as hostages. So thank God, if you want to think of redemption, I would look back at the past year and to think, is redemption possible? How about all those hostages who a year ago were still held captive in Gaza? And today, they are free. Thank God. Not without PTSD, not without the trauma, but they are free. And I say to each one of us that as Pesach comes, as you get ready for your Seder, you really want to make it a personal experience. Many of our fondest memories revolve around the Pesach Seder, right? It's a time when family and friends gather together, celebrate our tradition and our culture. And throughout our long storied history, the Jewish commitment to celebrating Pesach has been very strong. And even in the most difficult situations, such as the story on the screen, where in the concentration camp in 1943, they described how they had to hide out to bake matzah. Yeah, so if you really want, I see some people looking at it, I'll spare you, I'll read the story to you. It says here, the people in the camp were already used to their miserable situation. They saw death before their eyes, but they asked, where could we get flour? How could we bake matzah? And shortly before Pesach, one of the SS men in the camp entered the workshop. This is the man telling the story, a man named Moshe Pearl. Okay? He says the SS man walked into his shop and asked him where he painted signs. He asked me to make dummy targets for their target practice. They would, I guess, archery or target practice. And just then an idea flashed in my mind. I claimed that I would need flour, lots of flour, to paste the pictures of soldiers on our targets. He asked me how much flour. I said I would need about 5 kilograms. He liked my suggestion and immediately gave me an appropriate referral. The Jews at the Weinen concentration camp went to work, baking their matzah in secret. Even though they knew that they would die if they were caught, they baked the matzah in the oven in Pearl's workroom, keeping the door and windows sealed. When the night of the Seder came, 20 Jews managed to pull off a Seder, where aside from the matzah, they ate potatoes and drank homemade wine, which consisted of water and sugar. They even managed to read the Haggadah. While the Nazis succeeded in destroying so many Jewish lives, they failed to destroy the Jewish life from these Jews on that Pesach. That's from a personal accounting of one of the camp inmates, Moshe Pearl, 1943. Okay? So just to put it into perspective, and my friends, as difficult as the situation might be, you have to see that there's hope. You have to see that it will get better, no matter what you might be enduring and experiencing. No matter what Israel's been through some rough times before. Yes, we're going through a war again. And right now people can't travel. And we have people booked from Israel, don't know if they can make it to our Pesach retreat. And we have people who from here who want to get to Israel and don't know if they'll make it there. Right there. So please God, he'll be able to. Like I said, we all have 100% track record of overcoming our adversaries, of overcoming our challenges and struggles and you will get by this. Gamze Ya'avor will get by this. As a Jewish people, we are resilient, okay? We will overcome this. And so, my friends, this is the point that I want to get to here, that, if times call for a person, for whatever reason, whatever struggle or challenges that you can't make it to wherever you need to go, you have to know that we will overcome our challenges, okay? We will overcome all those difficulties. We will handle it, all right? So let's start with some of the areas. I'm just like jumping around thinking what we have to talk about, because on the one hand, you got to start cleaning up for Pesach. Let me just remind you that dirt is not necessarily chametz, and the children are not the korban Pesach. I'm talking to myself here. So if you think about the first items of preparation is to get ready, first of all, by eliminating chametz from our homes. It's a good opportunity to declutter, to get rid of some rubbish. To get, on Shabbos, I was looking for a book. I actually bought a book for this year Pesach. I didn't buy it for this year. I bought it 2 or 3 years ago, and I never used it. It's an idea that I wanted to do with you. Prepping for Pesach. I always buy new Haggadahs and fresh things. And I bought this book that's more in a format. I mean, this is a Haggadah. The book I got is like teaching the Haggadah. And I was looking for it. I don't know where it is. I bought it 2, 3 years ago. I got it. I looked through it in past years. And I said, this year, I'm going to turn it into slides. Meaning, I will take the book, and like I do many of our classes, I will make slides out of the pages, and I'll teach you the book. So I went into my office yesterday to search for it. I didn't find it. I found lots of other clutter and garbage that's from, I don't know, Petzatzkas Zeitung. So I did some spring cleaning, even though we're going into autumn. I mean, it was so windy and cold the other night that I thought we were going into winter tomorrow. But I got some cleanup done. And you know what? This is a good time of year to get some cleanup done. So no problem. You could do your cleanup now. But remember, this isn't the spring cleaning. This is chametz cleaning. And the basic premise you need to know is, on Pesach, we're not allowed to have chametz. We're not allowed to see chametz. We're not allowed to own chametz. So the first thing you're going to do, as we discussed before, is sell your chametz to the Beis Din. That means any chametz that you're not throwing out, that you're not getting rid of, put it away. It's not yours. You're going to be selling it to somebody who's not Jewish, and that will not be yours to touch. You can't touch what isn't yours. Lock it away. And that's the easiest thing. Cleaning, if you want to clean, gesundheit, but you don't have to clean. The idea of cleaning is you shouldn't have chametz. And my car was giving me some trouble this morning. I called Tzvi, my mechanic. I said, I'll bring you the car in 15 minutes. 5 minutes later, he's here at Chabaras. That's what's going on. He said, no, I came to collect it. Okay, great. That saved me some time. So I had to take out and see what do I need from the car during the day. Even though I ostensibly have somebody who works for me who's meant to clean my car every day. But I could see that there's chips and crisps and stuff that wasn't cleaned since last Pesach. And the kids' wrappers. So obviously, some people get the work done very superficially if you don't give them a little nudge. So I discovered I better clean my car better for Pesach. But that's the point of cleaning it. If I'm going to drive my car on Pesach, I don't want to find chametz. And that's where you got to give it a thorough cleaning. So you're cleaning up not to have chametz. You're not cleaning up to declutter per se. That's a side benefit. If you don't have the time to declutter now, at least do the Pesach cleaning. If there's a room you're not going to use on Pesach, you don't have to clean that room, okay? Lock the door, and you don't have to machzach meshuga, cleaning up something. I'm giving you practical advice that you're not going to even go into that room, okay? Zu gesund. So the next thing I want to go into is the Korban Pesach, but I'm going to go back to the chametz soon, because the chametz is important for us to understand and to discuss what it means. And I'm just trying to think of which ways to go in my talk. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm getting a little bit scattered. But I'll talk first about the Korban Pesach, then I'll go back to that. Why am I talking about the Korban Pesach? Because some people mentioned to me that they're not going to be with family and they don't know where they're going to be. Are they going to be home? So that's why I want to mention that, because the very first Pesach, 3,338 years ago in Egypt, in the year 2448 from creation, it was not held in a public square. It was not at a Pesach retreat. It was not at a shul. everybody did their Pesach at home alone. Okay? In Egypt, we, who were then a nascent Jewish people, we stood at the cusp of our peoplehood, but we didn't yet become a people. We became a people when we left Egypt. In fact, more precisely, when we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. And it's precisely at that time that this disparate group, our ancestors, this disparate group of individuals who blended together into a nation, that they were reminded that there's still something special and unique about their individuality. And always after Pesach, we talk about, and we'll keep this for after Pesach, but I'm just hinting to it now that we'll talk about it in our share after Pesach, when we count Sfira, and it's a time of mourning, but we have to count each and every day and make each and every day count, right? Day one is an individual, and we learn that the days are connected to the weeks, right? We count not just the days, but the weeks. The individual is important as part of a collective whole. The Judaism is not only concerned with Am Yisrael, but also it is concerned with Reb Yisrael, with each individual. And we saw that when the Jewish people, before they left Egypt, the night before, when they observed the Pesach experience that we're going to do this year at our Seders, the first night, April 1st at night, we will commemorate that event. And they all did their Korban Pesach at home that year. You know, nations tend to swallow up individuals. And this is why the family-based message is so important, because they observed it as a family at home. And we will forever remember Pesach 2020, where you didn't go to your kids for the Pesach Seder, I think, right? You did it at home alone. So don't forget that. And for any reason you're home alone again this year, hopefully you have where to go. Remember, it's happened before. Okay? You're just going back to the original. Now, whether you'll be with your children or not, I say it's important that we know how to observe, and that's why we're going to go through this right now. Of course, beyond tradition, we have to know that the Seder is very important because it taps into a specific spiritual energy that is only present at this time. See? Put energy bars for that. Not only energy bars, but kosher lePesach energy bars. Okay? A basic principle in Judaism is that everything that happens in this world is actually only a symptom of a spiritual energy that has been unleashed in higher spiritual realms, my friends. And this is true about everything and anything. From why my coffee spilled this morning to the fact of the height of Table Mountain. And it's certainly true about miracles and all the events that are happening in the world today as well. When a miracle such as the Exodus from Egypt occurs, it is because there's a special supernatural divine energy that was present at that time, and you could tap into that energy again at the same time. And that's what we're preparing for, to tap into that energy. So in other words, the Exodus story that happened all the way back then, that we're all so familiar with, is actually a symptom of a certain spiritual energy that was present then on the 15th of Nisan, all those thousands of years ago. And guess what? It is here for us again today. That is the point. Another important point I want to make is that these energies are recurring each year. When this day arrives, the same spiritual energies are present. Okay? So on Purim, the same miracles that happened then with the nature, we saw it happen this year in Iran. Okay? And the same energy that was present on Pesach, the freedom to be you, whatever you feel shackled to, that energy is present for you again today. I got an email from somebody late last night, early this morning, about the certain challenge they're going through. And you know, when you hear somebody's story and you start empathizing and sympathizing and feeling their pain, you realize, first of all, sometimes people have it worse than you do. But sometimes when we're in the rut, we don't see a way out. And that's the beauty that we were discussing a few weeks ago, the Daigas Balevish, when there's worries in somebody's heart, what should you do? One way of dealing with it is Yashichana. Shove it under the rug. Don't deal with it. Or cast it away if that's easy for you. But another way is Yasichana, to talk about it. So when this person wrote this email to me this morning, I realized if I was in that place, maybe I wouldn't see a solution. But since they're writing to me, I can help them without making light, without trivializing, without making dismissing their fears. And I would say that there's hope. Every situation has hope. And that's what's important, is that Pesach reminds us to tap into the energy of that hope, that we could experience liberation as well, just like our ancestors did back then. And when you think about it this way, we make not so much to commemorate, but to recreate, right? What we're doing is, we're not living history, we're tapping into the existing reality, my friends. Tap into that energy. And that's the point, that the Exodus experience that was experienced by our ancestors is not just his story. It's not just Moses' story. It's not just an ancient story. It is our story. Not one that happened long ago, but it's a recurring narrative that it is playing itself out in your life and my life today. And therefore, my friends, the energy that was present then is present today, and it's yours for the taking. I want you to tap into the energy and to realize that we have opportunity here to break free from whatever it is. And that's why the meaning of the word Seder is order. There's precision in it, okay? And there's exact detail in how we do it. Why? Because it's a spiritual experience that's prescribed to us by none other than God himself. And if we want to capture that experience, we have to follow the way that God prescribed it, as is taught by our tradition, right? So while it would be preposterous to go, and I use this example always, if you go to a birthday party, you start asking the question, okay, how much cake do we have to eat here? How many calories are we counting, right? How long does the birthday song go for? It seems silly. So why at the Seder do we say everything is precise? But it is. Precision is key. That's what the word Seder means. What does Seder mean? You said it before, Brian. It means order. Very good. There's an exact order and system for how we are going to celebrate this holiday. And that's why we start preparing in advance. Just like if you have a wedding, a special event coming up, you want to prepare well in advance. You want to be prepared for it. It's not a surprise. So when Pesach comes, you're not just rocking up, okay, what do we do here? Oh, we need matzah? I had a guest Friday night. Interesting story. So her whole family is not Jewish except for her. Father was married to a non-Jewish woman before her mother and to another non-Jewish woman after her mother. But she was born to her mother, the only Jewish child. And they were together on a trip in America last year. And she didn't know what to do. What's going to be? They're not Jewish. They're going to be celebrating Easter. But it's incredible because the whole non-Jewish family said, no, we want to help you with Pesach. So they went rushing. Erev Yom Tov into it couldn't have been last year, it had to be the year before, just based on what she said, into a Jewish supermarket they found. And they bought all the items they could, all the Pesach accoutrements. And they made a nice Seder. She was like the rabbi. And she was teaching everybody. Her younger sister is like, can I be a Jew too? I want to ask the 4 questions. Sure, you can ask the 4 questions. I think they have universal messages and relevance to everyone, which we'll get to. So, of course, every year we want to review. And that's why I feel like you could always go back to, you could pull out last year's Haggadah off your shelf. I could pull up last year's slideshow that we made, and we could discuss it anew and afresh. First of all, there's nothing wrong with reviewing everything. It's the same Pesach Seder, but we want to give it a new energy. And it's a new year. And hopefully add new ideas and insights. So let me ask you, before I go further, to think of a way that how you think of other examples in life, like a Seder. A Seder has to be exact. Is there anything else in your life that has to be exact? How about the prescription from your doctor? Last night I was at a bat mitzvah. A lady told me she wound up in a hospital 3 times in the past few weeks because the doctor put her on a new medicine and he couldn't get the prescription levels right. Obviously, it's a unique situation. And each time she winds up having a reaction. Yeah, you got to get it exact or else people could have terrible detrimental side effects, right? What else? Think of examples in your life. Yeah. Got to have it pretty exact. But there, at least there's a grading. I remember doing mine. And thank you, Gail and others here who helped me with editing. And Vivian, you're on. You helped me out. It was good, but it was a lot of work, right? And I had a team helping me here with editing my work. But either way, it is quite exact, but at least you get a grade. So if I didn't get an A plus, I could get an A minus, I could get a... The Seder has certain exact, but I also want to say about that. Hold on a second. It's a good point. As exact as it has to be, yes, the matzah, you can't eat chametz. Yes, we have chrein and we have charosas and we have maror, and we're going to go through all those details. But if your table doesn't have the perfect crystal that your neighbor has, don't worry, Hashem forgives you for that, okay? But I could think of other examples. I'll never forget when my wife and I were doing our wedding invitation. And we walked into the printer and we were getting the invitation done and the benches done. You know, so you do a collection of items. The thank you cards, I don't remember what else we needed. We weren't too particular about the color, about the this. You know, we wrote what we wanted. And there was another bride in the room. And she ordered a peach-colored invitation that was to match exactly with the retinue's colors that they were going to be matching each other. And when the invitation was printed, she was ois mensch, because the tone of the peach wasn't exactly matching the color of her retinue's gowns. Oy, oy, oy. And the printer said, thank God, the printer said to me, that lady, that bride's husband ain't going to have it easy. Maybe he will. Maybe she knows exactly what she wants. Pardon? We'll eat peach. But it's not just, you know, everybody, every bride wants her gown to be just so. And you play games, right? You go into, where were my kids taking me recently? To the cricket. I find it as boring as heck. I sit there on my phone. They're like, is that what you do? You come to a cricket game? I guess you find it exciting. But in cricket, there are rules to the game, as every sport has, right? It's not just Judaism, okay? And think of any situation. You want to send an email and you miss one letter. Is it going to reach the right place? There's a terrible joke for that. Do you know that one? Do I just say joke 386? Or do I have to tell you the joke? Okay, you can start laughing in a minute or two. So the Maisala goes that somebody was moving to a new location. So ordered flowers. But instead, by mistake, the flowers went to the home of a lady, a Rebbitzin, who just lost her husband. The rabbi just passed away. Oy, oy, oy. And now she gets the flowers and says, Mazel tov on your husband's new location. I think I messed that one up. Okay, I think it was a different joke. Anyways, you know, you have to get it to the exact place. If you give the wrong address, our shul in Santon is 8 Stella Street, Santon. And many times people wound up, and I was always specific to tell them, 8 Stella Street, Stanton, opposite the Chow train. Don't go, there's an 8 Stella Street in Oakland. And I've had many times where people wound up going to the wrong Stella Street, and then we either waited for them or we never found them, and they booked for a meal, and they landed at someone else's house. In fact, one time somebody told me they went to someone's house on Stella Street. I don't think it was 8 Stella Street. I think they wound up at the Jamesons or on Stella Street. So, you know, luckily they wound up in someone else's home who had more food to share. But if they wouldn't, you know, they would have had a Shabbos meal. You got to go to the exact location. In New York, where I come from, if you parked your car in the wrong place, you get a ticket. If you in Melrose Arch, if you park your car over the line, they're very strict in Melrose Arch, right? They'll clamp your car and you have to pay a 500 rand fine to get your car released. So what's my point? My point is mitzvahs are no different. They also have specific, precise measurements, and the nuances and details of each mitzvah have meaning. They accomplish something. There's a purpose behind them. The amount of matzah we eat at the Seder, the timing of the Seder. If we decide to do our Seder today, then even if you say the right words, it's not a Seder, okay? So all these points, all the items that we're going to discuss that are on our Seder plate, all the ideas, each detail carries tremendous profundity, just as the dot of the email address. If you miss that dot, your email will go to the wrong place. And it's not going to reach its intended recipient. On your phone, you get one digit off. You're not going to reach the person you want to call. Okay? Think of the human smile. Always like that example. One way of describing a smile is this upward pulling of the facial muscles. Okay, you see what I'm saying? But everyone understands that that only captures the external expression of a smile. The movements of the muscles are really a reflection of the emotional feeling that's inside, which is interesting why in Hebrew, what's the word for face? Panim. Ashena panim, right? But you know what else the word panim or pinim means? Inside. Because on the face, we could see an expression of what's going on inside. What's the expression of that? I know how you're feeling from your face. I can see it on your face. That is an expression I'm forgetting that I wanted to say that describes that. What's that expression? But I could see on your face, your facial expression shows how you're feeling, right? And I would say the same thing. The actions of the mitzvahs are all reflections of something far deeper and profound that we're accomplishing by doing what we do. The details of the action might not seem significant if you're observing it externally, right? But from the inner perspective, for what they represent, it makes a huge, tremendous difference. Don't underestimate it. And the point is, I'm telling you that there's the action, but there's also your heart. There's your passion. There's your enthusiasm, your excitement, the feeling that you have to inject into your experience. And God very much desires our heart. God wants us to have a relationship with him. And when Hashem notices that our heart and soul is in the right place, that even if you don't get everything else perfect, no doubt Hashem appreciates it, and it gives tremendous nachas on high. There's the Alta Maisa, I think I've repeated it before, but why not repeat it again, right? The story of the bell. You remember that one, the Purim bell? No? Come on, I told it last year, I'm sure, the year before. So the story goes that there was once a very wealthy person, and he had a very interesting custom. What was his custom? His home was always open, and he would invite all the poor people of the town in his village to come eat with him. Now, especially on Purim. Purim is a holiday when we're meant to share our affluence, our wealth, no matter how wealthy or no matter what we have. Whoever extends a hand, we give to them, we invite people in. Many people in our community have very open homes on Purim. I heard even some homes had some people got a little shikha this year, and some of the homes needed to get the police involved. At least I know of one such home this year. My kids told me. So this guy at his Purim feast each year, what he would do, I shouldn't say maybe it wasn't just his Purim feast. In fact, when I moved into my new house, I don't know where it is, must have taken it apart. But their old dining room, we turned into a living room. Their old living room, which was bigger, we made our dining room to be more spacious. So in their old dining room, I really wonder what happened with it. But I saw something interesting when I moved into this house. These people obviously were affluent. One of the former mayors of Johannesburg lived in my house. And they had a button they would push. I asked, what do you have an intercom, a button in the dining room for? They said, oh, that's to tell the staff that the food is ready, to bring the food, that we're ready to eat. So, you can't walk into the kitchen, which is the next door over. You have to push the button, the intercom. So I don't know what we did with it. I guess we must have gotten rid of it when we moved in, because I can't even recall seeing it anymore. But the sound system is there in my kitchen still. Anyways, this is the olden days, and the guy had a thing. He had a bell, and he would ring this crystal bell, and right when he rang it, a whole army of waiters, of servants would come and bring all this fancy food, and all the people would eat a very fine meal and drink. Everything was ready. Now, at the end of his Purim meal each year, what he would do is he would say, tonight, it's all yours. Everybody can go home with whatever they want. You could take home whatever is there, the finest silverware, the utensils, the crystal glasses. Let everybody take it home as a Purim gift. Isn't that nice? And all the impoverished, destitute people, not only did they get a good meal to eat for Purim, but they got to go home with a gift, something nice, a memento from the wealthy family's home. Anyways, one day this poor fellow joined. He came from a neighboring village, and he was so excited to be at the Purim feast at this wealthy home. And when it came time for the poor man, at the end of the meal, when the balabas said everybody could take something home, most people were taking knives and cutlery and plates, serviettes. There are certain things that are practical that you need at home. This man decided he wants that bell. He wants the bell. So the Balabas looks at him and says, what do you need the crystal bell for? I want that bell. Okay. Strange request. You take something more practical. What are you going to do with the bell? But either way, that's what the poor man wanted. On Purim, you don't refuse. Every person who asks, we give. So he says, Gesundheit, take the bell. Well, the next day, the poor fellow comes to his village and he says to all the people, I got something. I'm inviting you all to a feast in my house, a feast like you've never seen, my friends. And he set out a wooden table that he had. He borrowed from the park, a table they put outside. And he said, everybody sit down at the table. And you're going to see, when I ring my bell, you're going to see the waiters come out with platters of food like you've never seen. Fish and chicken and meat and patties and burgers and chicken and hot, you name it, they're going to come out with it. Wow, the people are so amazed. They're expecting. As soon as everybody comes, they're all seated. And he gives them a whole exciting pep story. He pulls out his crystal bell, he starts ringing it, and each time he rings it, garnished. No waiters come, nobody's there. The people look at him. They're waiting with bated breath. Nothing happened. He rings it again, he's nothing. Each time he's trying to ring it louder, more incessantly, again and again. No waiters appear, no servants, no platters of food, no drinks, nothing. Poor guy's humiliated. The guy gave him the wrong bell, right? He's red with indignation. He runs back. He runs away from them. He runs to the other town. He comes running to the gvir, to this wealthy fellow. He says, you tricked me. You lied to me. You switched the bells on me. You didn't give me the right bell. The guy looks at me. Of course I gave you I gave you the bell that I used yesterday, right? The poor man is livid. He's thinking, then why didn't it work? Why, when I rang the bell, did the waiters not come out? My friends, let's remember, at the Seder, we're tapping into that spiritual energy, that very special energy that's present on the 15th of Nisan. And the specifics of the matzah and the wine and the maror and the charoset and all the ingredients and all the accoutrements, everything we have to do. And the Haggadah. Yeah, this book here, that's your bell. Okay? We use it to elicit, to evoke those energies that we want to tap into. But if we try to tinker with the time, if you're going to ring the bell, if you're going to read the Haggadah today, it's nice, it's good to prepare, and we should. But if you don't do it in the right time, in the right setting, with the right rituals, and we're ringing hollow bells, you know what I'm saying? So the whole point of our gathering now and starting this 3 weeks before our Seder is to give you sufficient time. That as Pesach comes around, you're not coming and arriving hollow, empty. You're going to be prepared. And that's what I want to do. And it's important that we understand that the Seder that we see today is something that's evolved throughout history. Right? It looks the way it does in an effort to check many different halachic and ritualistic boxes. And much of what we see is a broad effort to bring many different obligations together into one sitting or one setting. Yeah? Think of it as a large grab bag of elements that have to be covered. There's so many aspects. And the precise Seder rituals is taking all those pieces and plugging them into the right places, creating one streamlined performative event. And we're going to spend time preparing for it now so that when that day comes, it will be a breeze. You won't be anxious and nervous and a mess. You know what I'm saying? So before we get into the nitty gritty of how many steps of the Seder, anyone know? 15, very good. 15 steps of the Seder. I want to go through the mitzvahs of Pesach, and then we'll get to the Seder by Wednesday. Tomorrow I want to go through the other aspects of preparing for Pesach, B'dikas Chametz, both physically and spiritually getting rid of the Chametz. But let's go through the mitzvahs of Pesach, okay? First I have to talk about the mitzvahs of Pesach. The first mitzvah I want to talk about is Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, the mitzvah of telling the story. What does Haggadah mean? No, Haggadah does not mean order. Seder means order. Haggadah means to tell the story. And this, you could say, is the flagship mitzvah of the Seder, right? It provides us the setting. It gives us, it tells us the story. And as we tell the story, and yesterday somebody was telling me that his Seder runs like a story. I'd love to hear how. In fact, I think it's a good idea for a Haggadah. I mean, all Haggadahs tell the story, but to run the whole story like a story, that's probably cool. I want to see what he does. Maybe we could do a practice run here that you run your whole Pesach Seder like a story. But that's the point of Pesach. We're enjoying to stage an elaborate ritual that is telling the story of our Exodus, and people like stories. So as many stories as you could tell and make the whole Pesach into a story, I think that's a good way to have a meaningful Pesach Seder experience. Another thing that's important as we go through the Pesach Seder, we'll notice this idea called, you wanted to read the translation. The Torah says, you should tell your child on that day, saying, because of this, God did this for me when I went out of Egypt. Okay, now something else we see that the Mishnah tells us. You'll notice that we start the story with a low and end on a high. That's the story of our history. Okay? According to the Talmud, the definitive rhetorical method to be used on Seder night is storytelling, and it follows this structure. We start on a low and we end on a high. Okay? And that's the story of many of our lives. And this element accounts for so much of the narrative, the whole story of the Pesach Seder, the Haggadah, and I guess you could say so many of our people's lives where you had difficult times, but hopefully today life is better. Like I said, it all works out at the end, right? What did they say at the end? It's all going to be good, and if it's not good, it's not the end. And hopefully it's good at the beginning and the middle too. If you look back at your life, you've had many experiences, a track record of overcoming anxieties and worries and stresses and difficulties. So stop worrying. And right now, let's focus on the point that we got here. And there are two opinions in the Talmud as to what constitutes the Genus. What's the low that we experience? The fact that we were enslaved, that's certainly a low. But there's something else that we read in the Haggadah. Do you know that our ancestors assimilated into Egyptian society? They even worshipped idols. Even they were idol worshippers. You look in the story of Purim, Jews assimilated into the melting pot, and unfortunately, our enemies from time to time wake us up and remind us of who we are. Somebody once asked the Rebbe if a Holocaust could happen again, and the Rebbe said, "Tomorrow morning, I believe it could happen today." We're living in dreadful times. There are, at the same time, I want to say that South Africa has it pretty good. We have maybe a government that needs some help, but we have it pretty good. And I want to remind you and encourage you to realize, I think we got it good here. I saw the 10 best places to be. My son showed me if World War III were to break out tomorrow, South Africa is one of the top 10 best places in the world. So there's a blessing here that the Rebbe gave us, and we mustn't ignore and forget that. But there's also all the details, the Pesach, the Matzah, the Maror, those are all part of the mitzvah of Pesach, right? The Korban Pesach was a very succulent meat. It was delicious. It was lamb, baby shepsele you brought, right? So you could say that is enjoyable. That's shebach. That's gastronomic delights. The maror is bitter. Genus, that's low. The matzah, what's matzah? Is matzah low or high? Depends if you like it or not, right? To some people, it tastes like cardboard. Tastes like cardboard. It's probably not so good. But you know what? Even the very name of matzah is called two names. It's called bread of affliction. Bread of affliction. It reminds us what our ancestors ate in Egypt that was tasteless. That's genus. That's a low. But it's also called the bread of freedom. It's a symbol of freedom. God calls it Chag HaMatzos, highlighting that the Jewish people left Egypt in such a haste that there was no time for the bread to rise. Is that a low or a high? That's shevach. That's praise for the Jewish people, right? So you have both of these points, and we're going to analyze them as we go along. Yes, Ramesh.
I'm going to flip the narrative on its head.
Yeah.
The Haggadah says that our forefathers worshiped idols. Now, it generally means in Egypt, as you said. However, traditionally, Avos only refers to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
Oh,
Now, as a child, did
worship
look at
idols.
Bibles. However, you can't say that about Yitzchak and Yaakov. So therefore, the Avodah Zorah they were guilty of, Avodah Zorah, there's a Gemara in Baba Basra thing that says if a poor person, a very rich person is producing poverty, has to take a job, which is a book of the Torah Shabbat. It is a strange work for him. To the whole world, worshiping one God was an Avodah Zorah. That's in the positive sense. They worship one God and the whole world can understand it because it was an Avodah Zorah, a strange means of worship.
Interesting, fascinating. Thank you for that, Rav Moshe. Oh, good point. I want to say on that note, for the coming days, I want everybody to come with insights and ideas. And I want to go around this room, and just like Rav Moshe shared with us now, I want each of you to bring ideas that you want to share that will make our class more interesting in that way, that everybody shares ideas. So thank you for sharing that. And please, I want everybody to share more and more and more so that you don't just hear my ideas for the Seder, we get each of yours too. And that's the next point I want to get to, is an aspect of chinuch, of education, that the Haggadah is like answering questions. It's a question-answer format. My principal, Rabbi Bogomolsky, wrote, in fact, a Haggadah called V'higadah Levincha. And in that, he called it V'dibarta Bam, because he said the word Bam stands for his name, Moshe Bogomolsky, backwards. And also it had his wife's name, Bracha, his name, Moshe. He had a couple other insights why he called it that. Either way, the idea is that he wrote it with the question-answer format, which I thought is very cool. Lots of questions with lots of answers. So let's do that too. When the Torah instructs us to tell the story of the Exodus, it frames it specifically in the context of providing answers to your child's question. So this contributes two major elements of the Seder. First of all, the question-answer structure, which makes it interesting. I find, I'm not a prolific speaker or writer, but I find that I engage a crowd more when I ask you questions, which you notice I do a lot of that, get the mind thinking. So we ask you a question. So why do you do that? Because it makes people think. And that's what we see in the Haggadah, right? Lots of questions. Okay? So that's something. And obviously we have all these different rituals that we do, lots of curious stuff that we do on the Pesach Seder night. And you know why we do some of that? Our ancestors were brilliant at pedagogy, at teaching children, because we're all children, we're all God's children. And you have to engage children in a way that they will want to be involved. So they did all types of things to get the kids curious, to want to ask questions. So that's something else we do at the Seder, various rituals, engaging the children's curiosity. What else do we have here? Eating matzah. Now, this is an independent mitzvah from the Torah to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach, or in diaspora, you could say on 2 nights of Pesach. And yes, why do we eat matzah the rest of the days? You don't have to eat matzah. But if you want carbs, then that's pretty much the only carb you'll get on Pesach. If you want to be carbless, that's fine. You don't have to eat matzah, okay? But the idea is, because you can't eat bread. But otherwise, the mitzvah of eating matzah is only on the first night, rabbinically on the second night as well. So make sure you have matzah at least for that night. If you consider matzah lechem oni, bread, it's called bread of affliction, we said before. Some people say oni means poor. Some people say it makes you poor because of the cost of matzah. So if you're worried about the cost that's too much from you, then buy just for your Seder nights. Every member who comes to Chabad Longevity Club will get a matzah to go home with. They're expensive, so one per person. Yeah. True, but what other carbs do you get on Pesach? Okay, fine, sorry. You can eat potato. You can eat potato, fine. I take that back, you're right. But it's one of the few carbs that you could have on Pesach. All right. What else do you want to say about the matzah? We'll get more into matzah soon. I just get putting out the basic mitzvahs of Pesach. What about maror? This is also a biblical commandment, an independent mitzvah from the Torah. Already in Egypt, when the Jews celebrated the very first Seder on the night before they left Egypt, they were told by Moshe, matzos umrorim yachlu. That night they had a brai. They offered, we're going to talk about that next, the Korban Pesach, but we'll they offered a Paschal lamb, which was lamb chops. They had a nice braai at home, and they ate it with matzah and maror. Okay. Next is obviously today the Korban Pesach we can't do because we're not in temple times. Although in Israel there are groups of people who bring a Korban Pesach, but it's not exactly the way it's done. Next, the Korban Pesach, let's just talk about it symbolically. Obviously, because in temple times there was a mitzvah. You roasted a lamb the day before Pesach. And Josephus describes what it was like. In past years, we read it. So maybe I should read it again with you. I have it right here in my Haggadah. So maybe we'll do this tomorrow. Because like I said, I don't want to jump into the Seder yet tomorrow. I want to go into the steps that precede the Seder. So maybe tomorrow I'm going to bring a few of my Haggadahs with. We'll take a moment and we'll read the Korban Pesach. It's fascinating. This book has a nice translation. I actually can't find it. So maybe it's a different Haggadah I have that has a nice translation. We'll read the story of the Korban Pesach, how it was done. Josephus describes it in great detail. Millions of Jews converging on Jerusalem. Lahavdil today, Mecca. You could say that the hotel industry does well during these times. In Israel, I don't know how it's going to do this Pesach, but usually Pesach time, Israel's busy with lots of visitors coming to celebrate, staying at hotels. And in temple times, no doubt, in Jerusalem area, the hotels were all booked up with people coming to offer the Korban Pesach. And you were meant to eat it specifically at home with a group of people. So you gathered family and friends. Now, obviously, that's only if your home is in Jerusalem. Luckily, I have lots of cousins in Jerusalem. So when Mashiach comes, if I don't have my own home in Jerusalem, I'll have where to go. I'll ask my cousins to invite you with too. But the Korban Pesach, while we don't do it today, obviously, because we don't have the temple times, we don't have the temple any longer, but its spirit of being a homebound mitzvah is certainly present today because the Seder is traditionally done with family and friends. So think about it that way, that our current Seder is all about evoking the memory of the Korban Pesach, doing lots of things similar to the way our ancestors did it when they would offer the Korban Pesach back then. So if you're home for Pesach, there's another way, bring family and friends. Interestingly, one of the dishes we don't serve at our Pesach Seder is what? Obviously not chametz, but what else don't we serve? We don't serve lamb on the first night of Pesach. Why don't we serve lamb? Because we want to miss the Korban Pesach until Mashiach comes. So we're not going to have lamb. So if you've worked out your Pesach Seder menu, make sure no lamb first night. Okay. What other important ingredient? Why is it not in here? Gosh, I'm missing some slides. 4 cups of wine, right? We have 4 cups of wine. That's a rabbinic enactment to evoke freedom. And what does the number 4 remind us? 4 evokes 4 specific terms of redemption that I mentioned in the Torah. Yes, the matriarchs as well. If we have time, I will review one of my old shiurim about the number 3 versus 4. Why 3 matzahs and 4 cups of wine? 3 patriarchs, 4 matriarchs. It's one of my favorite shiurim, and I think you'll find it interesting, but I'll do that next week, okay? I need to also remind you, just speaking about next week, we're going to have our model Seder next week, Monday, all right? I think you'll all enjoy it. Not model Seder, our model matzah bakery. So bring friends and come next week, Monday. We're going to do a model matzah factory downstairs. It is an annual tradition, which you'll all enjoy, baking your own matzah. Bring friends with. We just need to have an idea of who's coming, so give us advance notice. Now, there are different other elements of the Pesach Seder that we'll go through, right? We have Kiddush, Kaddish, you have the meal. You have to prepare. This year, you have to do an Eruv Tafshilin to go from Yom Tovim to Shabbos, and not to forget. We'll go through all of those details as we get closer to it. I want to take a minute now just to go through the Seder plate. And then, after we do the Seder plate, then I will we'll end for today. But tomorrow, I'm going to go through the Chametz searching and aspects of that, as well as the Korban Pesach, and then we'll get into the Seder itself, okay? So let's take a quick look at our Seder plate, just because it's the next slide. I would have done it later, but I'm not sure why I'm missing some of the slides. I think it's just, instead of jumping around, I'll just stick with that now. We'll go in more detail when we get through the Seder itself, but to look at, when we go into the Seder, how to. But let's look at our Seder plate here. On the top left, what do you see? an egg, a hard-boiled egg, okay? So our sages instituted that there be 2 cooked or roast items on the Seder plate to commemorate the 2 main dishes that would be consumed on Pesach during the temple era. What do you have on the top right? The zroa, the shankbone. Very good. So let's look at both of them. The shankbone obviously recalls the Korban Pesach, which we don't eat today. Today, most people will have a neck, a chicken neck that they burn. Maybe because in Russia it was expensive to get shankbone. I don't know. But whatever it is, whether you have a shankbone or you have an egg, or a neck, both of these are fine. But the egg is also mentioned in the Talmud. The egg recalls the Korban Chagiga, the festival holiday. The egg is also an item of mourning. Okay? So we'll talk about both of these. Let's first actually talk about, I'll start on the right side, the zroa, the neck. Zroa literally means an arm, actually. And that represents the Korban Pesach. It's roasted piece of meat, poultry. And the whole point is to remember that God liberated our people with an outstretched arm. Now, obviously, we know the original was the arm of a sheep was used there because you were part of the Korban Pesach, okay? The Korban Pesach was a sheep, a lamb. Since we don't offer the Korban Pesach any longer, to avoid giving the impression that we violated the law of offering a sacrifice outside the temple, which is not allowed, that's why many people today will prefer to use a chicken and they burn it so it's not something that people are going to eat. Also because in the temple you put it on the altar where I guess they get nice and charred. Must have tasted divine. That's why the Chabad custom is actually the piece of chicken, and we burn off all the meat to avoid any wrong impressions as if I'm going to eat this meat. Okay, so that's the story with the top right. Now let's look at the top left. Top left, you got the egg. The egg remembers the Korban Chagiga, the festival holiday, the festive sacrifice. Now, what's the Aramaic word? It's interesting because the Talmud was formulated in Babylonia. So hence, a lot of the connections are Babylonian. In Babylonian or Aramaic, the word for an egg is be'ah. In Hebrew, it's beitzah. Okay? But the word be'ah in Hebrew means to desire. So you're taking an Aramaic word egg that in Hebrew means to desire. And the idea is we desire, we wish we could return to Jerusalem with God's outstretched arm, that we could have the temple once again. And because an egg is roundish, right? You look at it, it's a symbol for the cycle of life. That's why it's traditionally eaten by mourners, recalling the cycle of life. Okay? So the egg on the Seder table is a symbol of mourning, that we mourn the destruction of the Holy Temple and all the calamities that befell our people and the absence that we feel acutely on the Seder night. So that's the purpose, that's the symbolism of the 2 top items of our Seder plate. Next, in the center, in the middle, right? What do you got there? You got the maror. Okay, what's the maror? The Mishnah tells us, maror means bitter, you're right. And the idea is we have bitter herbs to give us that feeling. It's a 5D experience. We want you to walk through the Exodus to experience the misery that our ancestors experienced back then. And the Mishnah lists 5 different types of herbs that classify as maror. Now, which one is it? You use whatever works for you. Some people use romaine lettuce. Some people use endive. Some people use horseradish. Some people use, there's various customs. What do you use? Huh? Parsley. What else do people use? Okay, now, people, you're asking about lettuce. Why do people use lettuce? I don't find lettuce to be bitter. I know when you put the maror, you put the horseradish inside, it becomes bitter. I actually like endives too. Oh, my father would use red radish too. Somehow we use red radish besides my horseradish. Oh, you can't have lettuce alone. Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to adopt it. Can't have lettuce alone. Okay, obviously romaine lettuce is not bitter on its own by conventional standards, but it is actually one of the preferred items that people use for the mitzvah because if the lettuce is left unharvested, then it becomes very bitter. And I think the same rule is relevant to the bondage experience in Egypt. Initially, the Egyptians, they coyly roped the Jews into thinking that they were helping this national effort. You're building the pyramids of Egypt. You have a chance to do this in comfort. And, it was like a project or a national project that you're joining. And of course, once they were ensnared in the project, what happened? They were brutally oppressed and they were turned into slaves. Their rights were restricted. And like the lettuce, I would say it started off sweet, but then it struck around and it got increasingly bitter. And this is mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, that the reason why romaine lettuce is the preferred vegetable, in fact, according to some, you don't need to even add the horseradish, but I mean, horseradish cleans our sinuses. I could probably use it right now. Okay. It's a technical reason, because back in Eastern Europe, the romaine lettuce was hard to obtain. Horseradish was abounded, there was plenty. So the communities used horseradish. I guess it's also bitterer. It's a bita, a beta. Which one is it? Today, I think whatever you could use, whatever you could get your hands on. How do you like your horseradish? Some people like it ground. Some people like eating chunks. Some people mix it with vinegar. I don't know. What's the beetroot? Not at the Seder, with your gefilte fish. That's chrein. That's what my grandmother used to do, I used to have a song I would sing with my grandmother from country west. It went like this. Oh, Bubby, you know what I like. A Shabbos tish with gefilte fish, that little chrein on the side, and the chulent, and the pot, and the kugel, nice and hot. Oh, yeah, Bubby. So that's what my Bubby liked at her Shabbos table. But the maror, we're going to have it twice. The first time after the matzah, and the second time in the korech sandwich. Let's look at the bottom of the bottom right of the Seder plate. What do you see there? What is that little mushy kind of paste called? Charoses. What is the meaning of the word charoses? Anybody know? What does charoses mean? The literal translation of the word charoses is earthenware. Is what, like mortar, earthenware. Charoses, charus, clay cheres, right? Okay, so it is reminding us of the mortar that our ancestors used to build in Egypt, right? The commentators tell us this commemorates the thick mortar that the enslaved Jews were forced to use in Egypt while they were laboring for Pharaoh and building the cities of Pitom and Ramses. So the charoses is a mixture of ground raw fruit, nuts, spices. And once again, there are different traditions, like on Fiddler on the Roof, tradition. So different traditions, how it's done. Most commonly, people use apples and pears and dates. Some people use pomegranates and walnuts. Sure, we use walnuts, almonds, cinnamon, ginger. I think the Chabad custom is fairly simple. Apples, pears, walnuts, and wine. We add a little bit of wine. You know what the grape did when they squeezed him? He gave a little wine. Actually, the wine is only added prior to dipping the maror in. Just then. Okay, that's when you add in. But different, like I said, different traditions, just different customs. And Pesach certainly is a holiday with lots of customs and traditions. And that dash of red wine commemorates the plague of the blood, which we're going to commemorate we're going to remember all the plagues. We'll talk about that when we get to that on Wednesday as we go through the Seder steps itself. What do you got on the bottom left of your Seder plate here? You got the you got the karpas. What's the karpas? In fact, I think I wrote these names down here. So you got the beah, the egg, you got the zroa, the shank bone. Now here we said the charoses. Let's look at the karpas. Is that a car pass? You get your car can pass through the toll? Are you driving into Santon City to go shopping? What's a car pass? Now karpas literally, that's a good question. I think it's what's the actual taich, the meaning of karpas? Is it a vegetable? You got me, karpas. Hold on, I got a Haggadah in front of me. Let's remember, what does karpas literally mean? Okay, let's open it up. Why is it skipping me? They just translated as karpas, eat a vegetable. There's a meaning to it. I'll have to remember. Maybe karpas does mean a vegetable. I'll look it up to see if there's another meaning to the word karpas. Either way, karpas, we take a vegetable, we dip it into salt water. And let's look at that. The egg we talked about, that goes at the beginning of the meal. You're going to eat the egg. The egg is only eaten later at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch. But it's a vegetable. What kind of vegetable? Again, different customs. I grew up using raw onion and potato. I actually think it's nice. Raw onion and potato and salt water. I don't know why we don't do that other times of the year. But other people use parsley or parsnip, celery or parsnip or radish. Some people use cabbage. Okay, use whatever you like. I use potatoes and raw onion. You have a question? Don't make me read the Megillah again. I read it 12 times on Purim. Okay, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. There's one item I want to leave you with for today. Because if you've not ordered it yet, you better get to the shops early enough. And that's your matzah, okay? Matzah is one of the most important. It's a biblical mitzvah. And at its core, matzah, very simple, basic. It's flour and water, prepared and baked at great speed and high temperatures that prevent the dough from rising, from leavening. 3 matzahs are used to set up a proper Seder plate. And of course, if you have more people at your Seder, you probably want to have more matzahs there too. Ideally, not ideally, if you know, in past years, I've given you a shir about the matzah. Maybe we'll do that one on Monday. The rise of the machine matzah is one of my flagship shiurim that I like giving you. It's actually based on a talk from Rabbi Jacobson, and I've turned it into a little bit of a shiur. I've seen others do it too, so maybe that we'll do on next Monday, the story of the machine matzah. I think it's worthwhile for us to look at that again. But I want you to ideally look at shmura matzah. So Monday, we'll talk more about the matzah, the importance. Either way, whatever matzah you use, make sure it's kosher. Make sure it's kosher for Pesach. We'll talk about the different levels of that on Monday, but you want to have at least for your Pesach Seder, the handmade shmura matzah edition. And please God, tomorrow, we will go through the preparations for Pesach, getting ready for your Seder. And thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget, you got opportunity now to enjoy a delectable lunch, to get your tefillin blood pressure done, to enjoy bingo at 12:30, followed by art, and have a lekka day. Please let the Rebbitzin know if you're joining bingo, if you're joining beading or knitting tomorrow or Wednesday. Tomorrow morning, guess who's back? Hillary's back for EFT with you.